this event. Le Beaujolais Nouveau is a very special tradition of the European American Chamber of Commerce, and it's also a wonderful reminder of the EACC's French origins and legacy. And so tonight, we are very delighted to welcome the Consul General of France, Guillaume Lacroix, as our guest of honor. And so let me give you a very brief introduction of Guillaume before we enjoy his remarks. Guillaume Lacroix took his position as Consul General of France in Chicago in August of 2017 to oversee the relations between France and 13 US Midwestern states. A fun fact, the territory of the Chicago consulate is about 25% of the surface of the United States of America. So a very, very large territory that he and his team are overseeing. Monsieur Lacroix started his diplomatic career as the Bureau of African Affairs headquarters in France, and then he went on to take a post at the French Embassy in Tanzania. In 2005, he joined the French Embassy in Washington, D.C., which then was followed by a post at the US State Department as part of an exchange program, and next at the European External Action Service in Brussels. From 2013 until 2017, he served in the cabinets of French foreign affairs ministers as counselors for African affairs. Monsieur Lacroix holds diplomas from the Institute of Political Studies and the Law School of Assas University in Paris. Guillaume Lacroix speaks Swahili, a language he studied at the Institute of Oriental Languages in Paris and in the field as well on the islands of Zanzibar in East Africa. So now it is my great pleasure to give you the Consul General of France, Guillaume Lacroix. Monsieur le Consul Général, c'est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Anne. Good evening. Bonsoir, Cincinnati. I hope you can hear me. It is a pleasure, it is an honor to share this evening with you. I'm unable to share a glass of Beaujolais because I don't have Beaujolais Nouveau here. I hope it is good this year. But I would like to thank the Euro-American Chamber of Commerce of Cincinnati for giving me this opportunity to have an exchange with you on the current situation in France, on the state of France-US relations, and probably we'll talk a little bit about the European Union as well, because the European dimension is very important to you. You are a Euro-American Chamber of Commerce, and it is extremely important and probably more and more important in France, the European dimension of our, not only our foreign policy, but our external relations as a whole, because in the context of globalization, there is nothing that is really now purely domestic, and the European dimension is important. But I will get back to that. As an introduction, I just would like to say that the situation in France in November 2020 is different from what is going on in the United States. You just have an election. We have our elections in 2 years from now, but we are affected. We are impacted by global challenges. Number one challenge, it's no surprise, it's the COVID-19 pandemic. The situation in France is probably neither better nor worse than the situation that is in our neighboring countries, but we were very affected by the first wave of the pandemic, and we are very affected by the second wave of the pandemic. And the French country is back to a certain form of stay-at-home order. It was, in a way, it was expected, but the severeness of the second wave was maybe not assessed appropriately, and this is not specific to France. It's probably something that has to do also with the individual behaviors and the behavior of some corners of our population that that are putting the rest of the society at risk. And this is not different here in the United States. So we have to deal with that. We also have to deal with the economic crisis, like all countries. We are severely impacted by the COVID-19. We are severely impacted by the economic crisis. We don't know yet how the growth or lack thereof will look for the year 2020. But I think that there is a general belief that we will or we may get back to the pre-COVID-19 levels only in the second half of 2022, which will be an election year in France. So question mark on the numbers for 2020, but even more important, question mark on the levels of a recovery in 2021. It seems right now that in the short term, the French economy is relatively resilient. The second stay-at-home order is, of course, impacting the economy, but like elsewhere, the economic actors have adjusted to the life with the pandemics. Some sectors are very, very impacted, some less, and we're trying to find the right balance between the economy, but also the health situation at the country level, but also at the individual level. The protection for workers is of course very, very important, and this is the number one priority. We are also affected by something that is not new, but recently, unfortunately, very dramatic events linked to terrorism, terrorist attacks in the Paris area. A teacher in the secondary school was beheaded by a terrorist, and also an attack in Nice again, and that raises a lot of questions. Questions about the protection of the citizens. Questions about what is homegrown terrorism and what is imported terrorism. Is terrorism from outside? The recent attacks were carried out by foreigners, by people who actually came to France recently, but this is not a reason to just consider this enormous challenge that is in front of us just as something that is imported. We need certainly more international cooperation, but France as a country, as a society, has to look into its own system and find the right balance between the necessary protection of the citizens and also take into account that we are a democracy, we are a state that is under the rule of law, and that the laws need to be to care for the protections of the citizens, but also to care for the protections of the rights of the people, and that's a major challenge in democratic societies in the 21st century. And there is another challenge that is more related to the regional or international situations, more tensions growing, for example, in the Mediterranean Sea, tensions in Lebanon, tensions in Africa. There are some conflicts that are a little bit under the radar. Unfortunately, we wouldn't like to see this conflict, but a country like Ethiopia, for example, is under a very strong stress. And I mention it purposely. Some people may think that Ethiopia is very far away from France. Yes and no, because as we see, not only the world is connected, but France has a very intensive relations with Africa for the good and for the not so good. We have seen over the past maybe decade, and this is not going to be solved tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Waves of migrations, waves of people fleeing conflicts, fleeing climate change, in look for a better future, and this is impacting the countries of the south of Europe, but the countries of Europe in general. So we are looking at the international scene from France. Of course, we look west toward the United States. We look east toward China, but we also look south toward Africa. That is our neighbor. In a way, Africa is a little bit like Mexico for the United States. So our destinies, our futures are really interlinked. Given these challenges, of course, our government, our society is working to address the challenges. COVID-19, we're trying to make progress to protect our frontline workers who are under very strong stress. Improve European cooperations. There has been some very positive and I should say moving developments in the past months, seeing people who were victims and ill with COVID-19 being treated in neighboring countries, transferred from Alsace to Baden-Württemberg, or there are so many different examples showing that European countries are demonstrating solidarity, and when the hospitals are in the risk of being saturated, neighboring countries step to the plate and provide assistance. That is good. But of course, we depend very much on the progress of science. Science is an issue everywhere. There are some situations where science is being challenged by people who are not scientists, and that is not untrue in France either. But I think if you compare with the United States, when it comes to wearing the mask, for example, there is a little bit of controversy, but not too much. Not too much. I think there is a recognition. There is laziness on part of some people, but there is a general recognition that we need to abide by the rules. But of course, we're still seeing a lot of conspiracy theories circulating on the social networks, like in the United States, regarding the vaccines, regarding science, regarding the distrust to scientists, and it is a very big challenge. Economic crisis, we have put on the table a recovery plan. We call it le plan de relance, of about 100 billion euros. That is a multi-year plan of investments in priority sectors to prepare the post-crisis. One is to mitigate the effect of the current crisis, but two is also to prepare the adaptations for the next phase. So there are a number of investments in the climate and energy efficiency, and that opens door for foreign investments. Also at the local level, some efforts to bring more cohesion within the French society and French territory. Not unlike the United States, we have challenges of rural versus urban and suburban, and that's very critical. And so the recovery plan, I mentioned climate, I mentioned cohesion, regional cohesion, and I also should mention efforts that are directed at sustaining the economic reforms that were started after the election of President Macron, to create an environment that is more conducive for business, for technology, for innovation, and very importantly for foreign investments. Europe is very important. I just would like to mention here that whatever we do in the France of 2020 in terms of strategic decision, there is always a European dimension. Not just because we like to say that we are Europeans and we are not Americans or Asians. No, it is really about the big questions that are posed to the old continent in the 21st century. I think there is a growing recognition in Europe, in continental Europe, that we need to act in a more concerted fashion, in a more coordinated way, As it has always been the case in the history of European Union, there seems to be a little too late tendency to react to problems, to react a bit slowly, and not to anticipate enough. And so what President Macron and Chancellor Merkel and others are trying to do is to provide the right level of response to the COVID-19 crisis, and in particular in the economic dimension, but also to work together to retake the control of the agenda and not being just responsive to crises here and there. And some very dramatic change have been decided upon by our head of states and governments in the course of 2020. I think the number one and most important decision was reached in July of this year regarding the financial markets and the debt, and the principle that the EU can borrow money as such, and start a process of some form of mutualization of debts that is more flexible and that can provide more relief to the countries or areas that need the most. And of course, if we borrow more money collectively, given the size of the economy, given the trust that exists and the confidence in the EU and the Eurozone in particular, that can be financially interesting, and we're trying to develop that. But also on the front of security, on the front of defense, a fund was created to pull together and help European countries to spend more efficiently in their security and their defense, and be more integrated. And that's why we're trying to push, but also to be on the initiative within the European Union. Given that environment, what does it mean for the French-US relations? The number one topic is of course the elections in the United States. We are, as always, as every 4 years in France, following with a lot of interest, a lot of attention, a lot of sometimes nervosity, the US elections. I think we are not too positively impressed by the polarization of the US society. This is a matter of concern. But again, this is not something that is unknown in our societies as well. So we're very concerned about that. And we think that it is better if actually we exchange more, if we try to be more together to address collectively the challenges that affect our geographies externally, but also internally, because again, a lot of questions that are being asked in France, or that are posed, that are ahead of us, we see the same in the United States, and we strongly believe that US and France need to keep working together on many fronts, on the front of science, on the front of technology, of innovation, of business, not just because the environment is more even, and that there are some external or new powers emerging. We think that we can cooperate with anyone, but at the end of the day, the values that France and Europe and EU share, even if we don't agree on everything, are very critical to redefine the future of the first half of the 21st century. We see that many of the multilateral institutions that were created in the post-World War II environment and the Cold War remain relevant, but are no longer functioning the way they should be functioning. So we have a lot on our plate as countries, as democratic countries, to redefine the international cooperation, to inject probably more representativity, more justice, to include more the African continent in the UN Security Council, in the WHO, in the rules of the trade, in the rules of the climate governance, health. That's very critical. We're talking a lot about the vaccines, and that's very good news, but we need to ensure that all the people, all the countries on the planet that need a vaccine will have access to the vaccine. And if you just leave the free market, it is not a given that it will take place. So the states, the institutions have to work together. We are hopeful that that the new administration in the United States will be more engaged in trying to find solutions and in trying to propose to be in rather than to be out, and also at the level of NATO, at the level of other international fora. US presence is needed. We also need trust between all the allies. We may be competitors, but we need to be friends and partners. This is one of the fantastic things that exist between France and United States. When we disagree, and we agree to disagree. It's not a problem as long as we respect each other. And I think we have been pretty good at that, and that should continue. But I'm just trying to wrap up here. I just also would like to say, what does it mean for Ohio? I don't know. We'll see. But as it was said by Anne, whom I thank very much, the Midwest is about a quarter of the territory of the United States. In terms of GDP, it's probably even the quarter of the GDP. And Ohio is a big state in the United States. It could be a big member state of the European Union. It is a diversified economy. It has a very well-trained workforce. It is a state that I think, regardless of the politics, or we've seen your governor, conservative governor, being very effective in leading Ohio and the Ohio population in fighting COVID-19. We've seen in the Midwest, the governors, Democrats and Republicans working together. We're following that with a lot of attention, and it has been a constant call of mine to my colleagues in Washington who are, inside the Beltway, saying, look at what is happening in the Midwest. Of course, it's not different from what we're seeing from other parts of the United States, but at the very minimum, we're seeing some sign of bipartisanship. And this is a kind of development that we would like to see more, because it probably brings more stability, more predictability in the business and exchanges between France and Ohio. We are lucky because we have 2 honorary consuls in Ohio representing France, and this is the only states in the Midwest and maybe in the entire United States where we have 2 honorary consuls. One for Cincinnati and Kentucky, and that is Nelly Boniol, who was taken over from Anne, and Isabelle Bibé-Calignac in Cleveland and in Columbus. I am a consul. I'm not the ambassador, but I would like to convey the greetings from the French ambassador, Philippe Etienne. Philippe Etienne actually came to Ohio on his first visit to the Midwest in July. It was special because of the COVID-19 regulations. We cannot do what we want, but it was his first visit, and I'm sure he will follow up with a visit to Cincinnati and to Kentucky. I think he's very keen on meeting the business community, the French business community, the American business community, the French-American business community. And I will stop here because I think I have. J'ai dépassé de 6 minutes, donc j'attends les questions. But thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion.
Dear Consul General, bonsoir. It's great to see you, and it's great to have you with us for this evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and thanks for your remark. We got